With everything that we buy and use throughout our lifetime, it's rarely asked, why do we even use the dollar sign? The first thing you might recognize is how the sign isn't on the bill itself. Paper currency does not need the symbol to show value because the bills already spell it out with numerals and words. The average person thinks it must stand for US. Since we know America uses dollars, assuming the symbol must be short for the United States is fairly reasonable, but that is not what it means nor where it came from. The real origin of the sign starts before the US dollar even fully took over American money. Historians generally trace the symbol to the Spanish peso, also called the Spanish dollar, or the piece of 8. This was widely used across the Americas in the 1700s. In fact, the Oxford English Dictionary says the symbol shows up in handwritten records from the 1770s tied to English Americans doing business with Spanish Americans. Early America was not using money in the neat, sophisticated way we use it today. Things were often unorganized, with Spanish silver coins everywhere, and you couldn't live a quality life without them because you needed coins for trade and commerce. Since they had no sense of structure, bookkeepers needed a quick way to write peso or Spanish dollar, simply starting by abbreviating it. The most widely accepted explanation is that they wrote something like P with an S added to it, or placed the letters on top of each other. Over time, the curve of the P faded, however the S stayed visible, and the mark slowly became the dollar sign we know now. Bill Moorer, an anthropologist at UC Irvine, describes the symbol as transitioning out of the way merchants abbreviated Spanish peso, writing an S and layering a lowercase p over it. As the mark got simplified through repeated handwriting, it started to become more common, where next thing you know, the symbol is now printed on screens, many different service receipts, and price tags around the world. So what many Americans still don't know is one of the most American-looking symbols actually comes from a Spanish colonial currency system. The reason the symbol stuck around for so long is because the United States officially adopted the dollar in 1792, and that dollar was modeled on the value of the Spanish milled dollar already familiar in circulation. Technically, the new country did not invent its money in a vacuum. It instead improvised by building on a system they were already familiar with. The symbol survived because it was the most useful and already tied to something we cannot live without: currency. When going down this rabbit hole, of course there are other theories, but most of them are weaker. One says the symbol came from the Pillars of Hercules shown on Spanish coins, where ribbon-like curves wrapped around vertical columns in a shape that looks a little like a dollar sign. Another popular theory says it came from stacking a U on top of an S for United States, which comedically sounds patriotic, but researchers say there is no solid historical evidence behind it. So until this day, the Spanish peso explanation still has the strongest documentary support.